Okay, we're recording. Welcome everyone to the Fountain Committee meeting. Today is June 2nd, 2022. With me here today are Dana Bixby from Dana Bixby Architecture, Hugh Page, our Highway Superintendent, Bob Jones, committee member, Mike Canales, our TA, and Carl Sprague, committee member. So great. So the first order of business is to...
And Mike Buffoni from the one.
And Mike Buffoni.
Crucial.
Thank you. All right. So we have, on today's agenda, we have reviewed the minutes from March 31st. And then up next, we're going to review and discuss the materials from the Dana sent around, and I'll share those out once we get to that. And any other business. So without further ado, how about if we go to the minutes? Did everybody have a chance to review those?
Yes, I thought that they were fine, and I would move to approve.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to pull up the material from Dana. And which screen should we start with, Dana? I've got the,
Three drawings, just A1 maybe, first one? I don't know.
that would make sense, huh? Okay.
You folks have a nice big screen, don't you?
Yeah.
Ours is a little smaller.
Is this the right one?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so and then you had some questions in your email, which I will go through too.
I mean, should I recap what we've done or anything?
Yeah, take it away.
I mean, we obviously met on site with most of the people here. We've gone back and field measured the fountain very precisely in terms of getting dimensions of each of the coping stones, which I know everyone's quite concerned about replacing properly and carefully and everything. And through the magic of computer drafting systems, we can very precisely determine the radius circumference of what we need for foundation relative to the existing stones. They vary very slightly, maybe an eighth to a quarter an inch in terms of differences, maximum differences in the actual radius of each piece. We, of course, had the assistance of the town and Matt Putton, the engineer from SK, who I invited to take a look at the soils. The soils are very well drained. We did the test hole. I guess we discovered where the electrical conduit is in the process. I assume that got repaired somehow. Because I drove by at the end of the day and it was all.
What is that electrical conduit for, by the way?
I don't think we know, but from my conjecture is it's possibly from the electric meter and box that's on the south side of the fountain.
For the tree or something?
To one of the street lights possibly, and it also could provide power for the Christmas tree lights.
Right.
I don't know. And
that utility box we're planning on burying.
Yeah, that'll be done with an electrician afterwards, yeah.
that's a separate thing that we had not understood that way, so that's fine, but we hadn't known that yet, so.
Okay, well, we are.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine. That's why we meet, right? So, so we've prepared cross sections and foundation drawings, and they're substantially ready to work from, but we did a concept for forms. I understand you still the plan that you're building the forms, or?
Yeah, I would imagine it's going to be plywood, rough, whatever it's fitting in.
We've done a circular foundation that's segmented into, I think it was 15 equal sections. And we've calculated, the line of which drawing shows that best.
How thick is the foundation wall? I asked you about it.
I believe we have it figured out.
The depth issue, right?
I'll get right to that. We figured this is an 8-inch frost wall.
Okay, great.
Is this the one you want up there, Dana?
Yes, well, this next sheet shows the stretch section through the wall. Not all the dimensions are on it, but, so what we heard from you folks was that the maximum water depth shouldn't be greater than 26 inches because that was a code thing. We didn't actually, couldn't confirm or ascertain precisely where that code reference came from. We didn't see it in the swimming pool code or the spa code.
I think it's in the general building code.
We would, I think we would have found it, but if anyone has a source for that reference, that would be helpful.
So that's not, you looked in Mass General Law and the building codes and it's not
We
there?
look in the building code every day,
Yeah,
and yes, you know.
And we're also barely changing anything there, you know?
What the key point was that what we field measured was that from the bottom of the pedestal to the top was 26 inches. It wasn't the water depth. So there's a discrepancy that we came to understand between the idea that the water is actually 26 inches deep as compared to what we actually field measured. If you go to the, well, you see how the cross-section shows a base for the statue, and the top of that base is aligning with the top of the coping.
yeah.
And field measurement, I think it shows up in the other section that's on that page. If you can scroll to the upper portion of the page
Yep,
possibly.
I can, hold on.
You know, and you can't read it from here, but again,
Zoom in, hold on.
we got 26 inches. So if you subtract the height of the coping stone, which, again, I have to say, I think it's 5 or 6 inches. My guy, Zach, field measured it, and I don't recall, it's not dimensioned here, but you have 20 inches of water. Now, is it as simple as that? Well, we're making the base aligning with the coping stone as it exists now, and we're keeping the water level just below the coping stone. I'm sorry, I misspoke. You can read the drawing now. Zach has it at 2 feet 9 inches. And so the water depth there calculated out at 2 feet. So,
All right, so we should look into where that 26,
Well, I would go by this because right now, if you want the coping stones to be the same level as the pedestal stones, so everything's across, then you're gonna want the water depth below it, so.
the result is what we show, I
And
think.
just say you end up with 2 feet of water. I don't think, is anybody gonna, because basically that's what they're saying, that's what we actually have.
then we're fine, but
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, where did that 26 inches come from?
Don't know, I'll try to look into that tomorrow.
We have experience with the swimming pool chapters and spa chapters that regulate, like, you need a fence for a swimming pool,
Yeah,
you know?
So what?
Let's not put up a fence.
You don't need a fence for a spa. And unless you have, and under, with certain dimensions and certain depth of water in the spa. And some conditions, you can put a cover on a spa. Well, I'm speaking of our experience.
Mike has his hand up.
okay, let's just,
Does anybody run this by Ned Baldwin? He deals with this stuff all the time.
I was gonna run it past him tomorrow.
Yeah, I've seen him a few times, and I've forgotten to ask him about it, but Ned goes around all these places and he's up on pool codes and all that. He might be able to tell you right off the top of his head.
Yeah,
Just to save some tracking down, looking through all the building codes. I'm sure that's a pretty dismal process.
He was sitting in his office when he,
I think that might be where you got that.
But actually, Ned is where we got the 26 inches because there was up at Davidians because
someone did it
he
before.
said if it's deeper than 26 inches, there's going to be a fence around it. So
I think it's gonna be great. I think it's gonna be great just to have any water in the thing. 2 feet of water is gonna be fantastic. It's gonna be so nice to be able to see water in that thing again.
Right. I mean,
And,
we
and
have
and
plenty of
I
water.
also have to say, I really appreciate the idea of raising the entire structure a few inches, just to get it out of the grass.
This is 4 inches higher than what the coping
Yeah.
stone is now.
It's great.
It
No,
takes
that's,
it up a tiny bit for visibility,
yeah,
and it helps with the grading around it.
no, I think that's going to be lovely.
Good. Okay, that was one thing. Dana, did you have more? I have your email.
Well, I, of course, ended with the comments and question about is it
Recirculation.
sustainable to supply the water and then.
Have had a lot of conversation
I bet you
on the
did.
subject. And honestly, one of the first things that we were proposing, was the,
Was that Ned?
Chuck, one of our selectmen.
was the,
It was Chuck.
was to do a recirculating system. What's interesting as we've gone down the road has been that the cost and complications of doing a recirculating system, electrification and chlorination and, and all this kind of stuff, it just ends up being, more than, just emptying out Lake Averick, which doesn't seem to be empty yet. So, I mean, it uses a lot of water, the fountain, but, the fountains, but the fact of the matter is that, like, we kind of came to the conclusion that it was actually okay to just go with the old school system,
So Mike, can you just, we touched a little bit on this. Can
Yeah.
you speak to the?
And Mike, you jump in. Oh, Mike has his hand up anyways.
Yeah.
Or I just.
Mike's from our water department anyways, so.
That he might just not have lowered it from before.
Yeah, I didn't lower it from before. My estimations over the years have been about 110,000 gallons a year that fountain uses when we turn it on. We usually turn the fountains in the cemeteries on in the week before Labor Day, Memorial Day, and then we turn them off Labor Day-ish. So that's 110,000 gallons. I mean, I know it sounds like a lot of water. It is a lot of water, but it doesn't cost us hardly any money to really treat that and send it out and use that much water. My biggest thing was getting a water meter on there so we can actually have a good sound number on how much that fountain does use, which we're gonna be putting the meter pit in with this project. The recirculation adds a big cost to it and a lot of kind of complications really. When we started looking into it, it was, and I've been up to Tavidians and seen the recirculation vaults they have up there, and there's pool pumps in there, and it's quite elaborate. And I just don't know the cost effectiveness of doing putting all that effort and money into it. And the other thing is winterizing it. It's another thing that's another big maintenance thing. And if something freezes and breaks, it's another expense. So we did run over this item quite a bit, and we just I think we all agreed it was just better off leaving it the way it was, as long as, we get the meter pit in there and we know how much water it uses. So that's the way we left it.
And the other thing, and Mike, jump in here, please. Even when I was before up in North Adams, we put in the splash pad, we decided to go without recirculating water. One of the advantages that both Stockbridge and North Adams happen to have is open water sources and reservoirs. So we're not drawing from an aquifer where you really have a lot more concerns. And if we did run into a summer, which Mike has said it hasn't happened in forever, a drought condition, what we would do is we would shut off the fountains at the cemetery here, the rest. So it's one of those things that if we had to control it during a real,
Then you would not
We-
run the.
I mean, I
could.
agree with you, Dana, and that was why we discussed it in the first place. I think that I mean, I've just heard different numbers over time as to what our actual use is. And the fact of the matter is, as Mike pointed out, we just don't know. So I think the first thing is to get that meter on there and find out exactly, find out exactly what the use is. And then at that, maybe at a later date, we can.
And where would that meter go? I mean, is that a big thing?
No,
no, it's just along the pipe coming in.
Okay,
That's gonna meter the amount of water coming in.
all right.
I mean, another thing that came up was if we had the recirculating pump, then, we potentially get into algae in the water and use of chlorine and so
I
on.
understand all that.
Yeah.
It's just
I think, sorry, but are these infiltrators?
that's the current idea.
Okay, so you have provision if you ever wanted to you could always tie into this and recirculate it down the road because you have your water and you have your drain.
So perhaps with the idea in mind that it asked and answered on my part, should it be more sustainable somehow? I have no, obviously you guys are in charge of the town, and so if you're comfortable with it, I don't have any more questions,
Yeah.
Where I do then have questions is, and we want to sort of, we're doing detailed drawings of the foundation and how the stones work and how things go together there. We're doing schematic drawings of where the water line is and where there's going to, we have the existing shut-off noted. Mike, you'd be tying into the existing town line without, to the extent of you're not going under the street to put a new line in from the main, you're tying into the existing line somewhere underground.
Correct. There's a water shut off there that was painted. I think you put it on your drawing, Dana.
Yeah,
We're gonna dig down along that shut off, put a new curb stop box and rod on there, and then a meter pit right after that in between the fountain and the
so that's sort of the easier
curb
way.
stop. We're not gonna go out into the street because
Right.
the water main is in the middle of the far right lane towards the sidewalk near the Pink Kitty. So it's gonna be quite a project. Sometime it really needs to it's gonna have to get done, but I don't know how they would reroute traffic because we have to dig across that whole 2-lane.
It's a big job.
Yeah, it is, because there's gonna have to be cops involved, it's state highway, there's gonna be rerouting traffic over the other side of the, the southbound lane on 7. It's quite a project there to get that 28 feet of water pipe replaced from the shut off out to in the road.
So you're planning to dig down, find the existing main, tie into it. So is there any chance, do you know what the existing main is? Is there any chance once you dig it out and expose it, it's deteriorated completely and needs replacement? I mean, what's the chance of that? Do you have any?
Well, what we're gonna do is dig down the current shut off, and because we know it works, we use it every year. And then we're gonna disconnect the pipe there because we can it's shut off now, obviously. And then put copper. Huey and I have been talking, we'd probably put a 3-inch conduit in somehow into the center of the basin. So if any water line ever needs to be replaced over the years, that a new like PEX tubing or something could be slid right into the center of the fountain. And once the fountain's demoed, this is going to be the first order of business, is to get that one of the first, once the footings and all that are in, or maybe before we get the water line dealt with, that's going to be one of the first things we do.
And, and we'll indicate on the drawing that sleeve sweeps up so that you can snake a new water line in there if you ever need to.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, no, I think a 3-inch sweep or something like that would be like, like electrical conduit or something would be ideal.
Right. Now, the other key question then is when you snaked the drain pipe, the cast iron one that sticks up there in the bottom of the basin,
Correct.
you had painted the lines sort of pointing towards what was it, 6 or 7 feet away from the catch basin grate in the street? Do we assume, or can we assume that that's tying perpendicularly into the stormwater pipe out in the street?
Assuming it does, yes.
And should we assume we can continue to use that? So if we're gonna turn the water on, run it for the summer, circulate it through, take it back to through the existing storm pipe going to stormwater. That's the easiest way.
Yes, I would say having 100-year-old or 100-year-old plus 1.5 inch galvanized drain line, that should be replaced in its entirety for sure.
So that
Because
would,
it's probably all rusted shut and it might not even, who knows if it even works. It's never been used because the thing hardly ever overflows in the last probably 15 years.
mostly
I don't know.
it's seeping out through the cracks more than it's running out the pipe possibly.
Yeah, it's never gotten up to the overflow
I see.
so that pipe, I don't even know. And it's only a foot, a little over a foot deep in the road. It's 2 feet deep in the grass, but the curbing and the center of the island is raised up from the road surface. So it was about 22 to 24 inches deep the whole entire way in the grass. And then when it dropped down into the road, the grade goes down due to the curbing and all that. And it was like 12 to 16 inches deep. So it's very shallow.
I think maybe the thing to do there is during demolition, expose it outside before demolition, cut it, and then we can do a exploratory, maybe camera it, check it out some way there.
Yeah, we can pull the catch basin cover and try to run a camera up the pipe and just see if that 1.5 inch does come in. Now that catch basin line out there, I'm sure it's deeper than 1.5 feet. It might just 90 right down straight into the top of it.
And then I also think we talked about whoever's going to spray the gunite, maybe, whatever they recommend for the sweep material. I don't know, something that works with their gunite,
For the sweet material for what?
the water. I know we talked about, whatever they recommend for pipe, SDR, ABS, whatever they use in their pool operation.
Oh, for the drainage pipe.
Right.
Yeah.
No, not the drainage, the water line for the sweep coming in.
For the sleeve.
We're gonna have to go up through the gunite, through the
Yeah.
foundation, up through the gunite.
Well, I think it's coming in under the gunite and then sweeping
Right.
up into the base.
Right, but we're concerned about having different products, which, something, I don't know, alien with what they usually use. We wanna make sure that
Okay,
that's.
well, we can check that.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting, see,
The other question I had was, where is the drain going to be located and how is it going to be valved off or plugged, or how are we going to, is there going to be a little valve that we open to drain it in the fall, or I'm just curious on how that was all going to work.
so our picture of this was that we're putting a drain in the bottom of the basin that would be possibly a drain fitting supplied by the gunite pool people, so it's compatible with their systems. We're piping that, sweeping it down, going below the gunite, through the foundation to don't know if it's I wouldn't call it a catch basin. I think there's small scale prefabricated polyethylene shutoff boxes. We did a grotto pool for, high-end customer where the plumber came up with all kinds of, open a cover, reach down, there's a shutoff valve in the ground that can shut the drain line off so that it's normally shut off when the pool is full and running. You open it up and let the pool drain out. And in this case, we're suggesting that, we'd install a subsurface infiltrator. Whenever the pool is drained, it's draining into the infiltrator into the ground. Now, a key question would be, because we don't really know what that cast iron drainage pipe is going out to the stormwater, would we want to be providing the constant drain from the pool into the subsurface infiltrator? That creates a different set of calculations for the sizing of the infiltrator. So you'd have a larger infiltrator and more cost. Now, Matt from SK said the soils were really great, gravelly, well drained, easy to work with. So sort of like the best condition you could find. He triggered my thinking when we were standing out there and he said to me, are they really gonna run this for 24 hours a day, X number of months a year? He was trying to guess on the spot, how many gallons would that be? Possibly from his point of view, that ends up being a lot of gallons of flow to go into the infiltrator. I'm pretty confident in saying it can be designed for, but we sort of actually then need to know what's the actual usage or flow,
So,
in order to design the infiltrator, but we won't know the actual usage and flow till you put the meter on the water main and start using it, so.
But the 110,000 gallons a year figure feels familiar to me.
I've heard, I've just heard different, so one question, Dana, is designing an infiltrator that will take that water, I mean, would the economics then change in terms of making it worth?
It would be,
Doing it.
if we had a way to put the water from the pool that's circulating from the water main into the basement and discharge continuously for certain months, you'd have to accommodate that volume of water.
Yeah,
If the purpose of the infiltrator was only to drain the pool once a year, it's a much easier, more modest, i.e. less costly bit of drainage design.
That whole basin's been an infiltrator for the last 15 years.
I mean, we dug down, 6 feet or so and had great gravel. It leaks and it drains out through the cracks that are there. It's not like it leaks out and then the water is waterlogged. I don't think maybe, has anyone ever seen that? It drains, it goes into the ground pretty easily.
Goes into the ground very easily. We've never had any issues with ponding or anything anywhere, or, any kind of groundwater, water running out onto the roads or anything. We've never had, in my 37 years there, I've never seen it happen.
Does it make sense to maybe look at behind the statue, putting a high water stack in, kind of almost what's there with a grate on it for, stormwater conditions, when the water level starts coming above.
That's interesting.
And then in the fall, we unscrew that and that becomes the drain at base level. And we just put a screen in there to let water go through, but also, it doesn't let, debris get leaves and stuff get down in there. Would that kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Because even if you put a shut off on this, you still got to get the high water on the backside of the shut off, or else, it's going to overflow the coping on storms is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, the overflow screen should go out past the valve, whichever the shut off valve is to drain it. That should go out past it and just pump in and then that can drain out into the town drainage out in the street.
That's what I'm thinking, but this would almost serve as both purposes in one, and then we'd have less fittings inside the pool, inside the fountain. You won't have 2 drains. You only got 1 drain, which is, potentially easier to maintain. You just unscrew that. Well, it'd be roughly 2-foot stack or 26. Pull that out, the water goes down, you screw a brass screen in because, correct me if I'm wrong, I think brass was used up there. And then we just put a screen plug in so water goes through, debris don't, or a little can goes over that or something, I'm just spitballing here, but.
Hugh, I'm confused. So currently, or in years past, the water is brought to the fountain and it drains out continuously over the months that it's being used.
Right.
And now that water goes into the catch basin or into the?
It just goes through the cracks and,
No, I don't mean in recent years. Originally, when that was a sealed pool and running, the water still ran through.
yeah.
but it had to go somewhere. It didn't go into, did it go into the ground or did it go into a
We're
system?
believing it went into a storm drain out in the road, but we don't know until we expose that 1.5 inches.
Yeah.
And then we'll do an exploratory that way, and see if we can utilize that, or we have to replace it, or maybe go with an infiltrator.
Yeah, because it just seems to me that it would, rather than depend upon good drainage in the soil, that
Right.
it would go into a system where, particularly if you have the conditions of an overflow, it would be like a sink. You have an overflow in a sink. And
Right, or a skimmer, which you don't
Or a
really get into
skimmer.
putting a skimmer into this thing. I don't think you're trying to minimize
Right.
what's there. So I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah, something like that. And
What
then,
was there was the
right,
the screened overflow that maintained the water level. Gets to a
Right.
certain level, it goes down and out.
and this was a threaded brass fitting. This unthreaded in the fall, and this now becomes your drain. And then there's just a little something that goes over it that's screened as well to keep debris from going into this drain. I'm just trying to think of minimizing the amount of fixtures inside the fountain.
So there's an unknowable with the viability and condition of the existing 1.5 cast iron stormwater pipe that these, Mike and you, I think it was, I guess Mike, I don't know if you guys snaked it out and located it heading out towards Main Street, and they painted the spray paint on the thing out to a position where there's a catch basin in Main Street here. And the inference, that it's like a reasonable assumption that, oh, I suppose that tied in to the, so this is stormwater, the main. I suppose that tied in and drained out that way somehow, or drained out that way.
But
And when I was tracing that pipe, as soon as I got out the catch basin, my signal died, so it ended right there.
But what we're,
I assume it drops down into that clay tile line there and drains into the town storm drain out in Main Street.
but we're assuming that it's good, until we actually.
That pipe is over 100 years, that 1.5 cast iron, the galvanized steel. I would not recommend using that at all. It's probably choked right down to almost nothing inside.
So if it's actually draining water, it might have rusted out or eroded and the
Yeah.
water is draining into the ground anyway, possibly. Is that?
It's a expired asset, let's put it that way. It's no longer, I would not use that at all, but we can dig up right where it is and put new 4-inch SDR or 3-inch, whatever. We can put a new drain in there, it's not very deep at all. It's very shallow.
Yeah, 3-inch guys.
But you'd have to dig into Main Street to do that, right? Is that what you're trying to avoid, or is it just that location not as bad?
Well,
Yeah.
Anywhere digging on Main Street's not great, honest with you. But
You're gonna do that like maybe July 20th or something, right in the middle of when all those folks are trying to get through the intersection.
Can you use a core borer to get?
Well, that's what I was thinking. If we do our overdig, we let the tail stick out into our overdig, and then we can actually do an exploratory, and we'll have a contingency plan in place to replace it. But if we don't have to, we can, bore it and router it and save it.
Right.
But if we can't, then we'll already
Well,
have
I
some
mean,
kind
you might say, don't even think of saying it,
Okay.
it's 100 years old, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, it's pie in the sky, and I think you shouldn't try and continue to use it because it's rusted out or degraded or clogged or what, I mean, you don't know. So there's two alternatives, is dig and explore and find a way to tie the continuously running overflow from the operation into the stormwater system, if there's a way to get a new pipe out there that you guys decide is feasible. Second alternative is design and size a subsurface infiltrator system to receive that water, let it percolate into the ground, and who knows I can't speak to what the cost would be. Maybe it's a wash because you'd have some kind of operation to replace the pipe, you have increased costs for a bigger infiltrator. So,
I mean, if they do the exploratory work, probably that'll answer both questions.
so we can complete the foundation and details for the stonework and the diagram of where we think the piping is gonna go, you need that anyway to say, okay, we're ready to start this in motion, I'm assuming. And then, you know, I mean, I can decide whether we invest in the bit of engineering to size an infiltrator for a certain volume of water. It's easy for me to get Mike to do a quick back of the napkin kind of quick assessment. He probably can.
So-
I'll have to convince him that it's okay to put that volume of water, you know, into the ground again. You know, it's kind of it went against his instincts of good engineering practice. So, sorry, you're.
No. So can we, Hugh, I mean, can we do an exploratory so that we can sort of have a more iterative process here before?
We probably could. It'd be nice just to rip it out and do it that way, then you can really get a good idea, but I think we could probably.
I think you let them, trust them to put in the right.
Okay, good.
They're gonna have a plan. It's either gonna be A or B, depending on the
Right.
exploratory.
Okay.
There's no like multitude of directions.
And how far are we from the sewer line there? I mean, it's really not far, right?
Well, you want to be from stormwater, you might.
Yeah, stormwater, yeah. I mean,
It's
it's like 20 feet.
80 or 90 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I don't
90
need to worry
feet?
about
Wow.
anything here, just let them do
But
that.
the issue is digging up, tell me if I'm wrong, Mike, Main Street, you know, disturbing traffic. Because in order to replace it fully, as I hear Mike saying, we really should, you gotta dig up Main Street to get it out to the, unless you can bore it somehow. But you still have to dig a hole to make the connection. If you could do a boring and push a pipe through, you still have to tie it into a stormwater main.
Is there a storm, there's a storm drain in the
Yeah.
north end of that
I think
island,
so,
right?
Yeah, I think it's there. Is it there or is it just to the right of it there
Well, there's a
somewhere?
catch
Yeah,
basin about
yeah.
Yeah, right
here,
there.
and
yeah.
there's a catch basin on the other side of the street here.
But if we get into that one, that seems like that would be.
And they're all driving too fast on Main Street anyway.
I mean, we should just do it
Storm
right.
drain, the storm drain that it goes into now, the 1.5-inch steel pipe it's not in a bad, where it goes out and goes in, the drain, the town drain pipe on Main Street. It's not a bad spot. We'll have to have a cop there for sure, but it's not gonna impede traffic really that bad at all. Going out towards like Mrs. Abdellah's house to that state drain out there, that state layout, you're gonna have to jump through all kinds of hoops to even think about going out that way. The other thing, if we do an exploratory dig, the best way to do that would be to dig right over the catch basin, right where the 1.5-inch line goes in, and we could actually potentially maybe pull a new line with the old pipe and hook new stuff to it, like 1.5-inch poly, and pull the old 1.5-inch pipe out and pull and hook the new polyethylene to it. And then, you know, we have a trenchless, we have a pit in the island, and we have a pit out in the street at the catch basin, and we pull the old pipe out and we pull the new poly underneath. Because we don't need like a 4-inch drain line. I mean, 1.5 inches is plenty. I mean, obviously that's all it was before. It's probably a 1/2 inch, the inside of that pipe now. So that would be a way to do it. I think we should have, well, my personal opinion is I think we should replace that drain and let it go into the town storm drain. That's my opinion.
I like that.
Completely. And you can also tell the town if we do it that way, they won't have to have a roundabout there.
Jump right into controversy. There we go.
Don't you have enough of that stuff in me?
When are you gonna get traffic lights?
Yeah, it'll power the traffic light, that's what
Vehicles rotate.
All right. So Hugh, you had brought up this idea of that there was a tie-in potentially at some point if we decided based on the results of a meter read for water use. Is that the case, that there's a tie-in for potentially going to recirculation?
Well, I think if you got it out, you got a drain, so I would imagine you could almost hook onto that and recirculate it. I would assume, I'm not a definite pool guy, but I don't see why that couldn't be feasible. Could you, Bob?
No, I don't see it either. You got that whole island, I'm sure you can, all you have to do is recirculate it through, within the island.
Put a sub,
Yeah.
vault in or something,
Okay.
If you chose to make it recirculate in the future, it seems like you cut out a section of the main, you'd have an underground vault with a pump. You'd feed the main into the loop that's going to service the basin. And so, once a year, you'd fill the basin, you'd shut off the main, you turn on the circulating pump, and you'd be running your water through. And come fall, you turn that off, then you open a different valve to drain out the basin. And that's how it would work. And the difference between something, say, really simple, if there is such a thing, my guy, Matt, thought there probably was. He said, aren't there like pond pumps that are $200 somewhere,
Yeah.
And I didn't look into it. We can Google search it slightly, but the real question is if you start doing that, then you need the treatment. That's where I definitely say, oh, wait a minute. I'm an architect, not a pool water treatment specialist, so I don't know for sure. I don't know. But conceptually, it didn't seem very complicated. That's all.
And as far as ease of building, it'd be nice to have the drain in front, but out of a visual thing, I think it probably ought to go behind the fountain towards the tree side. Does that make sense to you
Yeah,
as well?
okay. I mean, you mean,
Right, ease of construction, it'd be nice to see it here, but as a visual thing, you're gonna have this brass stacked there. That would almost plan it being back here. I guess I'm asking, does that make sense? It kind of be on the back side of this, right there, on the low side towards the base.
I mean, you're talking about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, maybe on the tree side, I would assume. This is obviously a question for the committee. This is a visual thing. And our sweep it wouldn't interfere, our sweep's going that way. We just have to come around the backside of the
I
stone.
will
base,
offer that if you could integrate this and this was removable,
Right.
you'd want this to be at the lowest point to drain.
Right, but I'd also put it on the backside of the sculpture on the lowest point as well. That's only I thought,
Put
obviously.
the
That's
drain pipe and the
Meaning,
water line pipe on the back of
Yeah, I'm all in favor of that.
facing the tree. So from the other three angles, you see at least.
so you're saying on this side, on the tree
Right.
side of.
Tree.
Right, the water line isn't gonna affect us no
And you
matter
have
what, because it's not gonna be visual,
Statue have the drain pipe.
but you're gonna have that stack.
Not have it in front
Yeah, that would be
or
good.
the side.
Yeah, that would be good.
That's up to you guys, that's a committee decision, but.
Yep.
The committee has spoken.
They want it toward the tree.
Right, we'll just plan that kind of a little
There'll
sump
be a way to
area.
make a,
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, I can sweep that around, or whoever sweeps it around, and
Yeah.
we'll just build that into a little sump in the gunite, you know what I mean? So it's a positive low point,
yeah.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, a little
Even if
bit
it's a few, yes, exactly. And that's
Just to be
where
sure.
our brass fitting good, and this is where our stand is. Yes, that's what I was thinking. I don't know if it makes sense, but.
Yeah, I can see that.
So back to recirculating, what if I were to, the mount has some lovely fountains. So what if I were to contact them and ask them, what they're doing? Because
That's up to the committee and how deep they want to get involved in that, I guess.
I
Remember, it goes back to treatment and other issues.
Yeah.
well, that's what I would specifically be
It's just
asking them.
it's just the upfront investment and the electrification and a whole bunch of factors that, I was the first proponent of recirculating, and I thought that was like the entire reason why we were doing this. But
Right, but
as we've gone down the road, it's become clear that maybe maybe it's just better to just go back to Louis Quatorze and like, let the water run.
Well, but Dana brought up this idea that it's, and actually Anthony had mentioned this too,
Yeah.
that doing a recirculating pump is not that, you just threw out $200, you know?
Oh, it's
Pump
not
is-
that big a deal.
Right.
Yeah,
The pump
So-
isn't a big deal. It's
Right.
when you get into other things like treating the water.
Right, so that's my question, should I just, is it worth my reaching out to the mountain, finding out,
My personal feeling is that we need to get this up and running. And to actually put in a recirculating unit is not that big a deal if you want to do it after the fact.
Okay.
And say,
Because you have your outlet and you have your in, and you're just tying.
Okay, all
You're
right,
introducing.
No, exactly. We're talking about much bigger things. I mean, the statuary restoration and the rebuilding of the basin and so forth. And, as long as we don't box ourselves in somehow so that we can't
Yeah.
do a recirculating system in the future, I see no problem with
yeah, and we're not,
right.
unless we find that there's some great disadvantage to this system, there's no
Okay.
reason to do it.
okay, I just wanted to put it out there, just to assure myself that we're not, okay.
Just to know, like up at Oxo, Tavidian, his fountains, they're all fed with town water. The services have backflow preventers on them because they're fed with town water. They have an automatic level device in them, so they always stay full because you're going to have evaporation. They have basically the same pool pump that I have on my in-ground pool at my house, which is, I know obviously Oso has, that estate has some beautiful stuff. I'd be interested to see, the cat and dog, the cat sprays a pretty hard spray, obviously because it's off town water pressure, and I kind of set it to whatever kind of looks good. All these other fountains are just they just kind of dribble water and they don't spray any, the ones that I've seen anyway, don't spray any kind of really high force water, like high volume water. But I think we certainly don't want to box ourselves in where we can't do recirculation in the future. Obviously, it's a great idea to do it. Like we all know it's going to run into some kind of algicide being put in there. Then if you have town water feeding it and we start treating it, it turns into all kinds of different things. But if you do have a recirculation setup in there, and we just have to turn the water on every now and then, the water pipe that's going to feed the fountain, the cat spraying, is going to be off the water system. So when you want to recirculate that, you have to dig back up and tie into the water line that feeds that, which is off the town water main. So it's not an easy switch over. It's going to take some serious work to add in a recirculation thing. The water line is 5 feet deep, and unless we put a spare in there at the time being, when we do this, I just want, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. That's all. It's the water line that's going to be connected to the cat's mouth is going to be, 5 feet deep out on the lawn, going through a meter pit, and there's not a spare line to hook a recirculation pipe up to get that water to feed out of that cat's mouth. So it's digging back up the meter pit and reconnecting somehow to that cat, the water line that feeds the cat's mouth. So just to put that out there, it's not a quick little change. And the other thing that we all talked about is all the fountains that I've seen around at all the estates that test these backflow preventers at, they all have probably 6 foot by 6 foot concrete vaults in the ground with a big aluminum Bilco hatch where it's so you can just walk right over to it and pop the hatch. So that's something that obviously is aesthetic wise is going to be in the island as well. So the last plans we had, everything was kind of in the rock, in the stone base, really, really compacted in there, recirculating. It was going to be a real tight fit for all that stuff, but just thinking out loud, that's all, just those ideas out there, those points.
And Mike, but we haven't, it's worked up to this point with enough pressure. I think there's enough, and we can also regulate the pressure just by the fitting that we put in the cat's mouth, right? And we can increase the pressure by putting in a smaller opening or whatever.
Oh, yeah, with the town
Yeah.
water pressure, but
The town water pressure, yeah.
right, yeah, oh, yeah, yep.
But I mean, that work that you just described, we either do it now or we do it later, but I just don't think that there's going to be a need to do it later, given it's been tried and true for the last 100 years or however long it's been there,
Yep.
that we actually aren't going to need a recirculating pump.
The only year we had to shut it off was 1996, when we had a pretty dry season. We had,
Yeah.
the reservoir was really low. We turned them all off, and all the cemetery fountains too.
Yeah.
I mean, get what everyone's saying. Apropos, like you're saying, putting in a recirculating pumps later on is a bigger deal than meets the eye. Possibly there's some consideration of, when you dig up the water main, teeing it all off and putting in some extra piping that would be prepared for a circulation pump. Maybe that's not too big a deal. I'm not sure. Just, and I'm happy to talk to Matt Putton about it more. He'd be the engineer I'd go to a little bit. He's a general engineer. I can call the builder and the plumber that worked on this other pond I worked on, where they took the lead. And once we had a design for this stone grotto pool thing, boy, we had all kinds of circulation pipes and pumps, and it wasn't treated either. So I don't know what the rationale was on that in terms of treatment. I do want to ask, if you've gunite, and I picture gunite being a dark charcoal gray, a dark color, is a chemical.
That's a good idea.
That makes the bottom not so visible, makes it reflect.
Kind of makes it invisible.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any other pros and cons, like, well, it's going to absorb the heat because it's black, but
No, we don't want aqua.
obviously not.
Okay.
And so,
All right.
okay,
The natural look.
Yeah, well, that, I don't know how that would withstand. I don't know, if the gunite usually gets plastered or stoned over or
sprayed, and the
Yeah.
gunite itself is the
it's
finish.
sprayed.
Yeah.
But usually they plaster over that, don't they, or no?
Well, then I
Just
guess
for
I don't know
sealing,
for sure.
just for
Maybe
seal
so,
it.
yeah.
I would I'm not sure. I've never seen the gunite stand alone. I guess I've always seen it plastered, but
Maybe I'm not
I don't know. I'm not,
misspeaking.
no, I'm not.
The gunite and its finished surface should have a finished product. It's a dark charcoal gray,
Right.
almost black perhaps. Finished surface, not the gunite.
Yeah.
So,
Carl, you're fine with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think there's also products, I don't know anything about swimming pools and gunite and so forth, but I mean, but I've got a little frog pond. I had a little sealant, that I put on it 30 years ago, and it's been holding up brilliantly, on top of whatever there was, which was just concrete, basically. So, I don't know how many steps it takes, but,
We're just talking about the
whoever
color.
pool surface.
The color.
Oh, well, the color, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Well, yeah.
okay, that's,
I guess that would be a question for whoever's spraying a gunite,
Yeah.
That there's a wire mesh that has to go down. Maybe they can
Right.
help us through that next stage, so.
I'm sure they know all about it.
there was general conversation about reach out to a pool guy to do the gunite. Was there a specific firm that someone knows and
I like,
to speak
I mean,
to?
I've dealt with Morrison's a lot down in Sheffield, but, it doesn't need to be them. I'm not sure who else is
Oh, you got
more
leisure
local.
pool.
Leisure, okay,
Darcy's
yeah.
area,
Great.
they're pretty nice people.
Okay.
I don't know, I guess it's who's available and price
Yeah.
point would make.
Yeah. I mean, by the standards of swimming pools, this is a tiny job.
Someone said when we were out there digging or meeting, when they come by and do this when they're on their way to some big job.
Right.
So, I'm happy to make a phone call and reach out to leisure pools That's the name I recognize from other past projects. Don't know them personally. But you say, hey, we got a thing in Stockbridge, I can send you the plans.
Right.
That's that's to get the ball rolling as far as,
And Morrison's are great also.
okay.
Bob,
Yeah,
any,
this is a very nice thing to have in your portfolio, to be doing the cat and dog fountain in the center of Stockbridge.
They could put the sign up in front, yeah.
Yeah.
I would just ask them on hardware, whatever we're using for drains and, you know, I would just,
Yeah,
whatever
sure.
their recommendation is for that, you know.
Okay.
okay, anything else?
I don't know, I think we've talked about everything. Oh, I have pictures. I went to,
Let me just check to make sure.
yeah,
Mike, do you have anything else? Mike,
No, I don't. I'm all good.
Dana, you, Bob, anything else?
No.
Mike Canales? No?
Nope.
Okay.
oh,
Kyle,
so
pictures.
I'm not very
Oh, wow.
tech savvy here, but anyway, this is, like from this afternoon at Jeff's.
Oh,
And he's really finished, I think, almost. He has some stuff to do with the dog's mouth. But, you know, he's basically done with the plaster
That's come a
for the
long way.
sculpture. And, oh my God, he is so relentlessly detailed about this whole business. Anyway, I think he's like ready to cast the rubber mold and like, you know, actually get to, you know, then from that he can do the actual casting. So I don't think that's so far away. Yeah.
'Cause that's the next piece, is trying to line up all these pieces.
Yeah. No, he's good, you know. Mike, you and I should talk. He probably needs some more money, but whatever. I mean, he's been extraordinarily diligent about the whole business, and I think he's done a beautiful job, you know. And you know, it's funny. It's like you don't realize, kind of like until you get into it, how much of the sculpture is missing and needs to be sort of reimagined. But you know, he's doing it, and he's got the base in great shape, and so I think the whole thing is you know, looking like it may like mesh well with the rest of our timeline with the basin and the base from wait, who's that? Chester Granite is doing our
yeah, Alan Williams.
our piece there. Okay.
So what's our next step? Do you need me to do anything as a next step, or what happens next?
These are very close for us to be finished with drawings that you need to work from.
Yeah.
Okay,
We finish them up now that we've answered these questions.
okay, great.
And so we'll do that.
And the exploratory digging.
I think the drawings look great. I mean, you
The
know.
exploratory is gonna happen as we dig it, as we're digging.
Yeah,
So
part
we'll
of
be
it.
under construction then. And right, we need to get the base piece, if he can hold it for delivery, get it ordered, get it
I
done.
I will send these to Ned and say, we got this conversation about the 26-inch. We believe we're going to do it with less than that depth. Please confirm, you know, this is an architect building permit kind of thing. We'll talk.
I mean, you know, I mean, it sort of feels like you know, I mean, beyond everything else, I mean, the most important thing I think is almost like figuring out a timeline, you know, and I think we would all like to have this happen, you know, this year. And so, you know, like, you know, when do we, you know, close the street? When do we do the plumbing? When do we dig up the, you know, the basin? When do we move the coping stones, you know?
So one thing that we're gonna need to coordinate
statue
is the Alan from Chester Granite, the base with
Yeah.
that second tier of the cat and dog fountain, because they have to fit together.
Right.
You know, they're shaped, so that's something that,
Right.
do
So
you
we
want,
probably need to
it?
get his work going. So that's
Okay.
already approved, so.
Right, but until, I'm thinking that until we actually have that second tier from Jeff, we
I
need,
thought he was gonna design it off of what we have now.
he's done he's working on the casting, but
Yeah.
the final product is, is in
So
some
we
ways.
have to wait for that before
I think,
Chester Granite
I think so. I think so.
can Chester Granite work off of designing it to the exact shape of the one that's in there.
I think it needs to wait.
I think it's the same thing. But the
Well,
fact
you
of the
don't know
matter is
that. You don't know because there's slight variations.
But a slight variation shouldn't make,
nah,
Well,
it's
the
gonna be
base,
fine.
look, the top of the base is like so. It's not like an exact,
No, it's a
it's like, got,
ellipsy thing.
it's got some curves to it. So I think it's going to matter.
have to-
Carl, it's going to matter, it's going to need to fit. It's even got these sort of edging things.
but that means you can't even order the stone and get it started until Jeff is done with his casting.
I think that's a possibility.
And we wanted to kind of look
Jeff
at
is done. I mean,
Statue out of-
plaster.
general interest.
It's the
Can we
thing.
just do one at a time, please? Because I
I'm sorry,
can't. It's all right.
we had wanted to see the statue out of general interest and,
Absolutely, you can go.
and so
Yeah.
what we've done is to field measure this existing base pretty precisely. It's got a certain oval, not true oval either, but, we could create a full-size template in print. Take it to, who's the sculptor who's doing Jeff?
Jeff Gulick.
Take it to him when we go visit and say, does your sculpture sit on this base? And give him a piece of paper that says, this is the template for what we think exists now. And we could interact there and say, yes, no.
Yeah.
If he says, no, it should be wider this way or, or
You
something.
should absolutely do that. He's completely available. He's there all the time.
Then we can go.
He's sitting right there.
Or I guess we're sort of doing the drawings with the architect, but we're not the project manager, shall we say?
No.
So someone would take that to Chester Granite, which is a template.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And they would like to work from a template, no doubt.
yeah,
So I'm offering to say, hey, I think we can do a template, full size. We'll figure out how to make it print out. If it's bigger than this piece of paper, we can figure out how to make it
right.
print.
No,
full size.
that's a great idea.
There we go.
I still think that, so you've got the, the bottom measurement and then the top measurement.
And it's got a little chamfer, yeah.
Yeah.
And we measured that at the base and at the top. And, it takes a little interaction to say, how do we actually cut the stone from that? That's what we need to be sure of. But what I'm hearing is, we want to work from a template that we've checked will fit the statue. The template goes to the stone guy and he say, here's the top, here's the height. I think we want these dimensions for the base and it flares a little, is fine.
Oh, Jeff's done the work. He's ready.
Can you cut it?
Good.
And that moves that stone along so that, and we're gonna need them to bore holes in it.
Right.
So we have to know how many holes and where. That comes from the statue because the pipe comes up into the statue. Zach was telling me, the feed that feeds the statue is a little off centers. He had measured it and it's on these drawings that way. Well, that's where you want to be nice and precise, or you want to have a nice sleeve that's big enough so the things can move around a tiny bit.
So you'll see, Dana, when you go to Jeff's studio, and I'll give you his contact information.
Figure it out, yeah.
You'll see that, the casting, and the question in my mind is that when he does when he makes the casting, when he pours the material in and he comes to get the final product, the question in my mind is that, that is going to be slightly different, as I understand it. So I want to make sure,
Then there's where the interaction I'm describing
Yeah.
needs to happen.
but we won't know that until he actually does that, pours that mold.
I think it's going to be very, very modest differences. I really don't think that.
Well, in the world of construction,
I would
that's
put
like
together
famous last words.
But the
Oh,
people
I'm
who
sure
are
it's
doing
gonna
it
fit.
I mean, that's,
take.
he's
And-
told me, I've seen like differences and I've asked about them and he said, well, yeah, it's not going to be exact. So that's,
Oh, but that's-
I just want to make sure that we don't get into a situation where we have a bottom layer that doesn't,
I'm saying I feel we can help you by taking a drawing, full-size template of what we've measured in the field, go to him and say, where are you at? how will it be different?
Thank you. Yes.
Do you think your statute, in the way it will be different, will fit on this template? If not, we say, how should we adjust the template?
Thank you.
And then we get to a point where we say, okay,
Okay.
Well, 10 minutes with a piece of paper and a pencil.
That's also Jeff's way of
Fine.
communicating.
Yeah.
Yes.
That,
The only other
let
thing-
Dana talk to Jeff and she will get out of him exactly what's going to be.
I'm very happy with that.
And Dana, I'd be happy to go over there with you if you need some translation.
prefer to go with one of your
committee folks,
All right, so this has been great unless
Thank you
anybody has
so
anything.
much.
Oh, Hugh, do you have something?
The only thing I request is, are you gonna have a rebar schedule?
Yeah.
Size, and also, I don't know what he wants, a 3,500, 4,000 pound, and does he want
We'll have-
it reinforced?
We'll have specs for that. That's what we would
Thank you.
normally do. Some of it is here already.
Okay.
A while ago.
We're showing these as typical frost swells with 3 number 4 in the footing,
Yeah.
stickers,
Yep,
2 number 4 top and bottom.
Yep.
And what we're figuring on is the 2 number 4 get bent.
yep.
Like this.
Actually,
I know.
This would be the lap.
I'm dazzled.
That was sort of a relief
We're not gonna try and bend
Right,
a big
right.
huge piece. We'll
Right.
do
because I'm
a
thinking,
piece
oh no, do I have
that's a
to?
single bend. So it's not too complicated to bend, and we're gonna need,
Right. So in theory, you bend one, you're gonna bend a bunch of them.
you're gonna
It should
bend
lay
them all, you're
out.
gonna bend them all the same.
thanks, Mike, we're all set.
Hey, Mike, thank you very much.
Gonna have 15 segments, 4 pieces per segment, you need
All right.
60 pieces.
You'll have bar sides down there,
and
4 or
those-
5 bar. I don't know.
Go to Mike.
We typically will use a number 4.
Yep.
These are all number 4, pretty.
What nozzle we.
I don't know, do you want a key in this? We don't really care about a key, or, I mean, it's all pinned anyway, it's not gonna shift side to side. It's up to
Are we
you.
good?
Yeah, I'm
No, but
looking
this
for,
Stickers.
Make a motion.
Provisions for
So-
water coming.
do we have a
I
motion
used to have
to?
frost wall details that look like
So
that.
moved.
Right, with keys.
So my engineers said, well, it's nice to do both. And then finally, after never
in
getting
favor?
it done,
Wait for Mike,
or rationalizing
What?
it's my capo.
both. So, actually,
Aye.
we're gonna have a grid here.
Sensei.
Number 4.
All right, I guess I have to make a motion to adjourn.
We did it.
We did it.
Like a-
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay.
Aye,
Motion.
Again, we haven't noted it.
Okay.
Right, but you'll have all that.
With the
there.
verticals
Seconded.
and then stirrups going this way. So it's